A woman walked into a county jail alive and walked out on a stretcher, half dead, because one dirty sheriff thought a Navy SEAL's wife would be an easy message to send. He was wrong. He didn't just hurt my wife that night. He drafted a man who'd spent 20 years learning how to break war zones into pieces, and I decided to treat that small-town jail like an enemy compound. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. I'm Logan, 20 years in the teams. I've been shot at, blown up, and left in places where the map ended and the mistakes began. None of that scared me the way one phone call from a stranger did at 2:13 a.m. Is this Logan Reed? Her voice was tight, like she was holding her breath. Yeah. Who's this? This is Nurse Violet from Ridgway County Medical. Your wife, Harper, she's here. You need to come. Now. For a second, my brain didn't connect the words. Harper was supposed to be 3 hours away at her mom's place, dropping off some documents and coming back in the morning. Hospital wasn't part of that plan. What happened? I asked. My voice went flat, years of training pulling everything inward. There was a pause. Sir, I can't say everything over the phone. She's stable, but she's been assaulted. The sheriff's office brought her in from the county jail. County jail. Those two words hit harder than any blast wave I'd ever felt. I was already grabbing my keys, boots half on, wallet in my teeth as I ran for the truck. Is she awake? I asked, slamming the door, engine roaring to life. Off and on, Violet said. She's asking for you. Please drive safe, but don't take your time. The line clicked dead. Driving safe was never an option after that. The highway was empty, a dark tunnel cut open only by my headlights. My hands locked around the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I replayed every mile Harper had driven that night. She hated small-town cops who thought a badge meant they could talk down to anyone. She was stubborn, honest, the kind of woman who would argue on principle even when she should just sign and walk away. But a jail? How did a speeding ticket or a lane change turn into a night behind bars? I watched the miles markers fly by, one after another, green blurs in the dark. I'd been in enough war zones to feel it when something was wrong before I had proof. That same cold feeling crawled up the back of my neck now. Not fear. Not exactly. Just that quiet click when instinct says, this isn't random. Ridgway County Hospital sat on a hill like someone had dropped a white box in the middle of nothing. As I pulled into the lot, gravel spit out under my tires. The place was too small, too quiet. Not big enough for the level of damage that phone call had hinted at. I walked in fast, but not running. In my world, when you run, people panic. When you move steady, people clear a path. Violet met me at the front desk like she'd been waiting, a young woman with tired eyes and a badge clipped to her scrubs. Logan? She asked. Yeah. Where is she? This way. We moved down a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and rain-soaked clothes. Harper always hated that hospital smell. Said it reminded her of endings. I wasn't ready for this to be one. Violet lowered her voice. The sheriff's report says there was a fight between inmates. Your wife was unfortunately caught in the altercation. Their words, not mine. Fight between inmates, I repeated. The phrase tasted wrong. She's not an inmate. Violet gave a small, bitter laugh. That's what I thought. We turned into a small trauma room. Harper lay on the bed, and for a second I didn't recognize her. One eye was swollen shut, purple and angry. There were finger-shaped bruises on her neck, a split lip, dried blood tangled in her hair. Her wrists were scraped raw like they'd been cuffed too tight and then dragged. I'd seen worse. On strangers. On teammates. On bodies that never made it home. I'd never seen it on the woman who left me sticky notes on the fridge reminding me to buy coffee. I stepped closer, the world narrowing down to the steady beep of the monitor and her shallow breaths. Her good eye fluttered open. Logan, she whispered. Her voice was shredded. Hey, I said softly, pulling a chair close, careful not to touch anything that looked broken. I'm here. You're okay. You're safe. Her hand twitched, reaching for mine. I wrapped my fingers around hers as gently as I could, like I was afraid she might fall apart if I held on too tight. They left me. Tears pooled in her eye, cutting through dried blood on her cheek. He left the door open and walked away. They all came in. I think he wanted it. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. Who? She swallowed. The sheriff. Big guy. Gray mustache. Called me mouthy. Said, "Let's see how tough you feel in there." Then he told them not to go too far. Not too far. I felt my grip tighten around her hand, forced myself to breathe. I'd been trained to listen under pressure, to collect intel even when everything in me wanted to scream. "How did you end up there, Harp?" My voice came out low, controlled. "I was driving back," she whispered. "Blue lights behind me. He said I rolled a stop sign. I told him I didn't. He told me to step out. I asked for his badge number. He smiled. Said, 'You people think you own the road.' Next thing I know, he's pulling me out of the car, saying I'm resisting, throwing me in cuffs. Said I could sleep it off in county." Her chest shook, a small, broken laugh. I thought it was just one night. I never." Her face crumpled. "They locked me in that cell, Logan." He just watched. I leaned in, forehead almost touching hers. "You're safe now. You hear me? You're safe." She shook her head weakly. "You can't fight them. He knows everyone." He laughed when I said your name. Said, "Navy boy isn't here now." The room tilted for a second when she said that. Victor, whoever he was, had made a mistake. Not just putting his hands on my wife. Not just letting those men loose on her. His biggest mistake was saying my name like it didn't matter. I stood up slowly, letting go of her hand. If I stayed any longer, I was going to punch a wall, and walls don't deserve that kind of attention. "Where are you going?" she asked, panic flashing across her face. I forced a calm I didn't feel. "I'm not going far. I just need to ask a few questions." Violet was waiting just outside the room, arms folded. "She tell you anything?" she asked quietly. "Enough," I said. "The sheriff." "What's his name?" "Sheriff Victor Hale," she replied. "Been here forever. People either love him or are too scared to say otherwise." "Is he still on duty?" "Far as I know, he brought her in, signed the intake papers, and left shortly after. Probably back at Ridgway County Jail." Ridgway County Jail. My next battlefield. I nodded, that cold seal calm sliding over me like a familiar jacket. Rage didn't help in operations. Details did. "I need directions," I said. "And I need you to keep an eye on her. No uniforms near her unless they're state troopers or anyone without his badge patch." Violet studied my face for a moment, then nodded. "You look like you know what you're doing." I looked past her, back at Harper through the small window, her bruised face half hidden by machines. "I used to," I said quietly. "I guess we're going to find out if I still do." Outside, the sky was just starting to think about turning gray. I climbed back into my truck, pulled out of the lot, and pointed the nose toward Ridgway County Jail. I'd spent 2 decades breaking down enemy strongholds overseas. This time, the enemy wore a badge and carried a clipboard, and he thought the walls of a small-town jail would protect him. He had no idea that by letting those inmates beat my wife, he had already locked himself and every man in that cell into a different kind of war, one he couldn't see yet, but one I was already planning with every mile I drove. By the time I saw the first razor wire glinting in the early light, one thing was clear in my mind. Justice wasn't coming to Ridgway County on its own. It was arriving in an old truck driven by a man who had already survived worse than anything those cells could hold. And I wasn't there to bark at the gates. I was there to walk through them. The jail sat low and mean, red brick walls stained dark from decades of rain and neglect. A rusted sign read Ridgway County Sheriff's Department, Detention Facility. The parking lot was half empty except for 2 patrol cars and a muddy pickup truck that looked older than me. I stepped out of my truck and walked toward the front entrance. The air smelled like wet pavement and something sour, like garbage left too long in the sun. My boots echoed on the concrete. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a pale yellow glow. A deputy sat behind a thick sheet of scratched plexiglass, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up when I approached. "Help you?" he muttered, still staring at his screen. "I'm here to see Sheriff Hale." That got his attention. He glanced up, eyes sliding over me. Jeans, plain jacket, nothing threatening. But something in the way I stood made him sit up a little straighter. "Sheriff's not available right now." "Then make him available." The deputy frowned. "Who are you?" "Logan Reed. My wife, Harper Reed, was brought in last night. She's in the hospital right now because someone left her in a cell with inmates who beat her half to death." His face didn't change, but his hand moved toward a clipboard like he was looking for something to hide behind. "That was an unfortunate incident," he said slowly, like he was reading from a script. "There was a fight among inmates. Your wife got caught in it." Sheriff filed the report. "Caught in it," I repeated. "She wasn't an inmate. She was processed. Holding cell. Same as everyone else." I leaned forward, just enough. "Where's the footage?" "What footage?" "The cameras. Every jail has cameras. I want to see what happened in that cell." He shifted uncomfortably. "Camera in that block was malfunctioning. We got it on the maintenance log." "Of course it was." I straightened, jaw tight. "I want to speak to Sheriff Hale. Now." The deputy picked up a phone, muttered something low, then hung up. "He'll see you in 5. I waited. 5 minutes turned into 20. I didn't sit, didn't pace. Just stood there, hands loose at my sides, breathing steady. It was something I'd learned in the teams. Don't waste energy on anger until you know where to aim it. Finally, a door buzzed open, and a man stepped through. Sheriff Victor Hale was tall, broad-shouldered, with a gray mustache and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wore his uniform like armor, badge polished, gun belt sitting low on his hip. He looked at me the way you look at a dog that wandered into your yard. "Mr. Reed," he said, voice smooth as oil. "I hear you've got some concerns. My wife's in the hospital." "I know. Unfortunate situation. We've filed a full incident report." "Unfortunate," I echoed. "That's the word you're going with." He tilted his head. "What word would you prefer?" "Assault. Battery. Criminal negligence." Victor's smile didn't falter. "Now hold on. Your wife was arrested for resisting an officer and disorderly conduct. She was placed in a holding cell as per standard procedure. While in custody, there was an altercation between inmates. We responded as quickly as we could. She wasn't an inmate. She was in my custody. That makes her one." I felt my hands curl into fists at my sides. I forced them open. "I want to see the footage." Victor sighed, like I was boring him. Camera was down. Happens sometimes. Old equipment. Budget cuts, you know how it is. Convenient. His eyes hardened, just a little. "You accusing me of something, Mr. Reed?" "I'm asking questions. If you've got nothing to hide, answer them." Victor crossed his arms, leaning back against the wall. "Your wife came in aggressive. Gave my deputy a hard time. I put her where she needed to be. What happened after that is on those inmates, not me. You left her alone with them." "I left her in a holding cell," he corrected. "There were 3 other individuals in that cell. They got rowdy. We broke it up. End of story. She said you told them not to go too far." Victor's smile vanished. His voice dropped, quiet and cold. "She said a lot of things. Happens when people get emotional. Memory gets fuzzy. Her memory's just fine." He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell coffee on his breath. "Let me explain something to you, Logan. This is a small county. We handle things our way. You don't like it, you're welcome to file a complaint with the state. But between you and me, nothing's going to come of it. I've been sheriff here for 15 years. I know every judge, every prosecutor, every clerk in this building. Your wife rolled a stop sign, got mouthy, and ended up in a bad situation. That's the official record. You want to argue with it, go ahead. But you'll lose." I didn't move, didn't blink. "I'm not arguing," I said quietly. "I'm listening." Victor studied me for a moment, then chuckled. "Smart man. Go home. Take care of your wife. Let this go." He turned and walked back toward the door. One more thing, I said. He stopped, glanced over his shoulder. Who were the inmates in that cell? Victor's smile returned. That's confidential. The door buzzed, and he disappeared behind it. 2 weeks later, I sat in a small office across from Amelia Garrison, a lawyer who specialized in civil rights cases. She was sharp, mid-40s, with reading glasses perched on her nose and a stack of files spread across her desk. They're stonewalling you, she said bluntly. Missing footage, conveniently broken cameras, intake logs that don't match the timeline. Every deputy is repeating the same story word for word. Can we fight it? I asked. We can try. But Victor Hale owns this county. Judge Colin Morris? He and Victor go way back. The prosecutor, Brooke Callahan? She owes her career to him. We file a complaint, they'll bury it. Harper sat beside me, quieter than I'd ever seen her. The bruises had faded to yellow and green, but the damage inside hadn't healed. She barely slept. Every time a door slammed, she flinched. So what do we do? I asked. Amelia leaned back in her chair. We push. We file. We make noise. And we hope someone with more authority than Victor decides to listen. We filed. The hearing was a joke. Judge Morris listened to our complaint with the expression of a man watching paint dry. Brooke Callahan argued that Harper had been lawfully detained, and that the incident was beyond the sheriff's control. Victor sat in the back row, arms crossed, smirking. When it was over, the judge dismissed the case. No evidence. No witnesses. No cameras. Harper cried in the parking lot. I held her while she shook, her voice breaking as she whispered, "They're going to get away with it." I didn't answer, because standing across the parking lot, leaning against his patrol car, Victor caught my eye and tipped his hat. That's when I felt it. The switch. The one I'd learned to control in 20 years of combat. The one that separated emotion from mission, rage from precision. Victor thought he'd won. He was wrong, because the law wasn't going to touch him. But I was. 3 days after the hearing, I stood in my garage staring at a wall I'd cleared completely bare. A folding table sat in the center with a laptop, a notepad, and a county map I'd printed from the library. Harper thought I was letting it go. I let her think that. She needed rest, not more weight on her shoulders. But I wasn't letting anything go. I was planning. The doorbell rang around noon. I closed the garage door before answering. Hunter Graves stood on my porch holding 2 coffees and wearing a grin that hadn't changed since our last deployment together. He was older now, beard streaked with gray, but his eyes still had that edge, the kind you only get from seeing too much and surviving it anyway. "Heard you had some trouble," he said, handing me one of the cups. "Word travels fast. Only when it matters." He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "You gonna tell me what's going on, or do I have to guess?" I led him to the garage. He took one look at the map, the notes, the timeline I'd started building, and nodded slowly. "There it is," he said. "I was wondering when you'd stop pretending to be a civilian." "I'm not going vigilante," I said. "I just need to understand the system." Hunter laughed, sharp and bitter. "Logan, you've been surveilling a county sheriff's department for 3 days. You've mapped patrol routes, shift changes, and weak points in their security. That's not understanding a system. That's prepping an operation." He wasn't wrong. I sat down, rubbing my face with both hands. "They beat my wife, Hunter, left her in a cell with animals, and walked away. Then they buried it." The sheriff smiled at me in court like he'd already won. "So what's the play?" "I don't know yet." Hunter pulled up a chair, studying the map. "Yes, you do. You're just not ready to say it out loud." I looked at him. "What would you do?" "Me?" He leaned back, arms crossed. "I'd remember that you spent 20 years learning how to dismantle networks, break enemy strongholds, and turn chaos into victory. This sheriff? He's not a civilian authority figure to you anymore. He's a target running an operation. And you know how to take down operations." I didn't respond right away, because he was right. I'd already started seeing it that way. Victor wasn't a man in a uniform anymore. He was a threat. His department was the infrastructure. The jail was the compound. What about the law? I asked. Hunter snorted. The law already failed you. You tried their way. They laughed in your face. So I just what? Go rogue. No. Hunter tapped the map. You go smart. You don't break the law. You make them break themselves. You get inside, gather intel, expose the rot, and let the system collapse on its own weight. How? He grinned. You know how? You just don't want to admit it yet. That night, I couldn't sleep. Harper was upstairs, finally resting after taking her medication. I sat in the dark living room, staring at nothing. Hunter's words kept circling in my head. You know how to dismantle networks. I did. In Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, we didn't just kick down doors. We studied patterns, identified weak links, turned enemies against each other, and struck when they were most vulnerable. Victor had a network. Deputies who lied for him. A judge who protected him. Inmates he used as weapons. And from what I'd learned digging through public records, Victor wasn't just corrupt. He was running something bigger. Complaints filed against his department over the years. Missing evidence, excessive force, mysterious injuries in custody, all dismissed or buried. This wasn't one bad night. This was a system. And systems could be broken. I opened my laptop and started searching. Not for lawyers this time. For patterns. Inmate rosters. Arrest records. Court filings. Transfer logs. It took hours, but eventually, I found it. Inmates transferred in and out of Ridgway County Jail on irregular schedules. Some stayed less than 48 hours despite serious charges. Others disappeared from the system entirely, only to reappear weeks later in hospitals or different facilities with unexplained injuries. Victor wasn't just letting violence happen. He was orchestrating it. And the men who hurt Harper? They were still in that jail. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. If I wanted justice, real justice, I couldn't fight Victor from the outside. I had to get inside. The next morning, I met Amelia at a diner outside town. She slid into the booth across from me, already suspicious. You're planning something, she said. I need information. What kind? The inmates who were in that cell with Harper. Who are they? What are they in for? And why are they still there? Amelia hesitated, then pulled out a folder. I shouldn't be giving you this. But you are. She sighed. 3 men. Preston Cole, leader of the group, and on assault charges, but his trial keeps getting delayed. Evan Briggs, petty theft and drug possession. And Mason Tate, parole violation. None of them should still be in county. They should have been transferred or bonded out by now. Why aren't they? Because Victor likes having them around. Word is, he uses them for favors. What kind of favors? Amelia's voice dropped. The kind that involve making problems disappear, or making examples out of people who don't fall in line. My jaw tightened. Harper was an example. Probably. I stared at the folder. How do I get to them? Amelia's eyes widened. Logan, no. Whatever you're thinking, I'm thinking they need to answer for what they did. Not like this. You go after them, you'll end up in that same cell. And Victor will make sure you don't walk out. I met her eyes. What if that's the point? She went pale. You're insane. I'm tactical. You're going to get yourself killed. Or I'm going to get the truth. I leaned forward. Victor thinks he's untouchable because nobody can get close enough to prove what he's doing. But if I'm inside, if I'm in that cell with those men, I can get them to talk. I can get evidence. And then you take it to someone who actually gives a damn. Amelia shook her head. This is the worst plan I've ever heard. It's the only one that works. She stared at me for a long moment, then closed her eyes. If you die in there, your wife will never forgive me. If I don't try, I'll never forgive myself. 2 nights later, I stood outside a bar Victor was known to frequent. I waited until he came out, drunk and loud, surrounded by 2 off-duty deputies. I stepped into his path. Victor. He stopped, squinting at me in the dim light. Then he smiled. Logan Reed. Thought you'd crawled back under a rock. I wanted to talk. We've got nothing to talk about. Sure we do. I stepped closer. I want to know why you're still walking free after what you did to my wife." His smile faded. "Careful, son." "Or what? You'll arrest me." One of the deputies moved toward me. I didn't flinch. Victor raised a hand, stopping him. "You really want to do this?" "Yeah," I said. "I really do." He laughed, shaking his head. "All right, Navy boy. Let's see how tough you really are." He swung first. I let him. Victor's fist caught me on the jaw. I stumbled back, tasting copper, but I didn't swing back. "Not yet. That all you got?" I said, loud enough for the growing crowd outside the bar to hear. He came at me again, angrier this time. I blocked, shoved him back hard enough that he tripped over the curb. His deputies moved in, but bystanders were already pulling out phones, recording. "Easy, Sheriff," one of them muttered. "People are watching." Victor's face went red. He stood, dusting himself off, then pointed at me. "You just assaulted an officer. Cuff him." I didn't resist. Let them grab my arms, twist them behind my back, slap the cuffs on tight enough to bite into my wrists. I kept my face calm, even as Victor leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear. "You want it in? Congratulations. You just bought yourself a cell. Perfect." They processed me at the station like I was any other drunk picked up off the street. Fingerprints, mugshot, personal belongings bagged and tagged. I didn't say a word, didn't lawyer up, didn't make it complicated. Victor watched from the hallway, arms crossed, that same smug grin plastered on his face. "Put him in Block C," he told the intake deputy. "Let him cool off with the boys." Block C, the same one Harper had been in. The deputy hesitated. "Sheriff, that's..." Did I stutter? "No, sir." They walked me down a long corridor that smelled like sweat, mildew, and desperation. Concrete walls, buzzing lights, and the distant sound of voices echoing off steel. The deputy unlocked a heavy door, and it swung open with a groan. Inside, 3 men looked up. Preston Cole sat on the bottom bunk, thick arms covered in faded tattoos, a scar running down his cheek. He was the biggest, the loudest, the one who ran the room. Evan Briggs leaned against the wall, wiry and twitchy, eyes darting like he was always expecting trouble. Mason Tate sat on the floor playing cards by himself, quiet, but his shoulders were tense, like a coiled spring. The deputy shoved me inside. "Play nice." The door slammed shut behind me. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Preston stood, slow and deliberate, towering over me. He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he was trying to figure out. "You're him," he said finally. "Him who?" "The husband." Preston grinned, showing a missing tooth. "Victor said you might show up. Didn't think you'd be stupid enough to actually do it." I didn't answer, just moved to the far corner, sat down on the empty bunk, and leaned back against the cold wall. "Not much of a talker, huh?" Evan said, smirking. "That's cute." Mason didn't look up from his cards, but I saw his jaw twitch. Preston stepped closer. "You know what happened to your wife in here, right?" I kept my voice flat. "I know." "And you still walked in?" He laughed. "Man, you're either brave or brain dead. Maybe both." Evan snorted. Preston crouched down in front of me, his grin widening. "Victor told us to keep an eye on you. Said if you cause trouble, we handle it. Just like we handled her." I met his eyes, calm, cold. "You proud of that?" His smile faltered, just for a second. "She had it coming." Evan chimed in from across the room. "Mouthy bitch wouldn't shut up." My hands curled into fists, but I forced them open. "Not yet. Not here. Not like this." Preston straightened, still staring down at me. "You ain't gonna do nothing, are you? You're just gonna sit there and take it." Like she did. I looked past him, at the walls, the cameras, conveniently angled away from the bunks, and the door with its small reinforced window. "I'm just here to serve my time," I said quietly. Preston laughed again, louder this time. "Yeah, we'll see how long that lasts." He walked away, flopping back onto his bunk. Evan muttered something under his breath. Mason still didn't look up. I closed my eyes, slowed my breathing, and started counting the seconds. 20 years in the teams had taught me patience. How to sit in enemy territory and wait. How to let them talk, let them feel safe, let them expose themselves. These men thought they were predators. They had no idea they were already surrounded. The first night was the hardest. Not because of them, because of the silence. The sounds Harper must have heard. The fear she must have felt. I didn't sleep. Just listened. Evan snored. Mason muttered in his sleep. Preston shifted every few minutes, restless. Around 3 a.m., the door opened. A guard looked in, flashlight sweeping the room. His eyes landed on me for a second longer than the others. Then he left. No check-in. No questions. Just a look that said, "You're on your own." Victor's people were everywhere. By morning, I'd mapped the room in my head. Exit points. Weak spots. Who slept light? Who didn't? When the lights buzzed on, Preston sat up and stretched. "Sleep good, Navy boy?" "Well enough." "Good." He grinned. "You're gonna need your energy." 3 days passed. I didn't speak unless spoken to. Didn't start anything. Just watched, listened, learned. Preston liked control. He made every decision, every move. Evan followed him like a shadow. But Mason? Mason was different. He stayed quiet, kept to himself, and twice I caught him staring at me like he wanted to say something. On the fourth night, after Preston and Evan were asleep, Mason finally spoke. "You really a SEAL?" he whispered. I opened my eyes. Why'd you come here?" "You know why." He looked away, jaw clenched. "I didn't touch her. But you were here. I tried to stop it." His voice cracked. "Preston told me to shut up, or I'd be next." Victor told him to do it. Said she needed to learn respect." I sat up slowly. "Victor gave the order?" Mason nodded, eyes glistening. He unlocked the door. Told Preston to teach her a lesson. Said the cameras were off, so nobody would know. My blood went cold. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm tired of being scared." He wiped his face. "And because you look like someone who can actually do something about it." I stared at him for a long moment. "Keep your head down," I said quietly. "And when the time comes, tell the truth." Mason nodded, then turned away. Across the room, Preston stirred, muttering something in his sleep. I lay back down, staring at the ceiling. Victor had just made his first mistake. He thought putting me in this cell would break me. Instead, he'd just handed me the evidence I needed. The days inside blurred together, each one a slow burn of watching, waiting, and learning how men like Preston operated when they thought nobody was keeping score. He ran the cell like a kingdom, decided who ate first, who got the good bunk, who spoke and when. Evan played the loyal soldier, laughing at every joke, nodding at every command. Mason stayed in the corner, silent and tense, like a man counting down to something he couldn't name. I stayed quiet, played the role of the broken husband who'd made a mistake and was just trying to survive. Let them think I was harmless. But I was cataloging everything. Preston had a routine. Every morning, a guard named Quinn would stop by the cell and slide him cigarettes through the door slot. Not standard issue. A gift. Payment for something. Evan talked too much when he got nervous, which was often. He'd mention names, places, things Victor had them do before. Beatings, threats, messages delivered to people who needed convincing. Mason never joined in. He'd sit with his back to the wall, staring at his hands like they were stained with something he couldn't wash off. On the 6th day, Preston finally tested me. It started in the day room, a cramped space with 2 metal tables, a broken TV, and a guard who barely looked up from his phone. Preston walked over to where I sat, slammed his hand down on the table, and leaned in. "You've been awful quiet, Navy boy." I didn't look up. Got nothing to say. "That right." He pulled out a chair, sitting across from me. Evan stood behind him, arms crossed. "See, I'm starting to think you're playing some kind of game." "No game." "Then why you here?" I finally looked at him. "I hit a sheriff. Got arrested. Pretty simple." Preston grinned. "Nah, nobody's that stupid unless they got a reason." "So what's yours?" "Maybe I just wanted to see the men who hurt my wife." His grin widened. And now you've seen us. What you gonna do about it? The room went quiet. Even the guard glanced up for a second. I leaned back in my chair, calm, controlled. Nothing. Preston laughed, loud and mocking. Hear that, Evan? He ain't gonna do nothing. Big bad seal. And he's just gonna sit there like a bitch. Evan snickered. I didn't move. Preston stood, leaning over the table until his face was inches from mine. Your wife cried, you know. Begged us to stop. Said she was sorry. But Victor said she needed to learn, so we taught her real good. My jaw tightened. Every instinct in me screamed to move, to strike, to make him pay right there. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about rage. It was about control. And the second I lost control, I lost the mission. You got nothing to say? Preston pushed. I met his eyes, voice low and even. I'm just trying to do my time. He stared at me for a long moment, then shoved the table hard enough that it scraped across the floor. You're boring. He walked away, Evan trailing behind him. Mason watched from the corner, something unreadable in his eyes. That night, after lights out, Mason whispered again. Why didn't you hit him? Because he wants me to, I said quietly. The second I throw a punch, Victor's got an excuse to bury me deeper. Assault on an inmate. Resisting custody. They'll add years to my sentence and call it justice. So you're just gonna let him talk about your wife like that? No. I turned my head, looking at him in the dark. I'm gonna let him think he's winning. And when he's comfortable, when he drops his guard, that's when I move. Mason was silent for a moment. You really are a seal. I corrected. But some things you don't forget. Preston's dangerous. He's got Victor protecting him. You go after him, you'll lose. I'm not going after him, I said. I'm going after the system that keeps him here. Mason didn't respond, but I heard him shift on his bunk, the springs creaking softly. Across the room, Preston snored, loud and careless. He had no idea the clock was already ticking. 2 days later, everything shifted. A new inmate was brought into the block. A kid, maybe 22, scared out of his mind. His name was Ryder. Possession charge, first offense, wrong place at the wrong time. Preston saw fresh meat and moved in immediately. Welcome to hell, kid, he said, grinning. You got commissary money? Ryder stammered. I don't, you don't. Preston's smile vanished. That's a problem. Evan stepped up beside him. Yeah, big problem. Ryder backed against the wall, eyes wide. I'll get some. I'll call someone. You'll get it now, Preston said, shoving him hard. Ryder hit the bunk and crumpled. Mason looked away. I stood up. Leave him alone, I said, voice flat. Preston turned slowly, eyebrows raised. What did you say? I said leave him alone. Evan laughed. Oh, now he's got a spine. Preston walked toward me, that same predatory grin spreading across his face. You defending him? That what this is? I'm saying he's not worth your time. And you get to decide that? I didn't answer. Preston stepped closer, chest to chest now. You've been real quiet since you got here. Real respectful. But now you want to play hero. I'm not playing anything. He shoved me. Hard. I let him. What? You gonna cry about it, he taunted. Like your wife did. My fists clenched. There it is, Preston whispered. There's that anger. Come on, Navy boy. Show me what you got. The guard outside wasn't even looking. Ryder watched from the floor, terrified. Mason's voice cut through the tension. Preston, man, leave it. Shut up, Mason. I took a slow breath, forcing my hands open. I'm not fighting you. Preston laughed. Yeah, because you're scared. No, I said quietly. Because you're not worth it. His face twisted. For a second, I thought he'd swing. But the door buzzed open. A guard stepped in. Cole. Visitor. Preston straightened, still glaring at me. We ain't done. Yeah, I said. We are. He left, Evan following. The door slammed shut. Ryder exhaled shakily. Thank you. I helped him up. Stay away from him. Keep your head down. Mason watched me, something new in his expression. Respect, maybe. Or fear. Either way, the balance in the cell had shifted. And Preston had just shown me exactly how to break him. Preston came back from his visitor meaner than before. Whatever conversation he'd had outside these walls left him coiled tight, looking for someone to unload on. That someone was me. Navy boy. He called from across the day room the next afternoon. You and me. Cards. It wasn't a request. I sat down across from him. Evan leaned against the wall, watching. Mason pretended to read a torn magazine. Ryder stayed in his bunk, smart enough to make himself invisible. Preston dealt the cards sloppily, his eyes never leaving mine. You think you're tough, don't you? I think I'm just trying to get through this. Nah. He threw down a card. You think you're better than us. I can see it. The way you look at me. Like I'm dirt. I don't know you well enough to think anything. But you know what I did to your wife. He grinned. And you're still sitting here playing cards with me. That makes you either a coward or a fool. I played my hand, saying nothing. Preston's grin faded. Say something. What do you want me to say? I want you to admit it. He leaned forward. That you're too scared to do anything about it. I met his eyes, calm and cold. I'm not scared of you, Preston. I just know you're not worth throwing my life away for. His face darkened. He stood abruptly, flipping the table. Cards scattered across the floor. You think you're smart? He snarled. You think you can just sit here and wait me out? I stood slowly, hands at my sides. I'm not waiting you out. I'm just watching you prove who you are. And who's that? A coward who only feels strong when someone else tells him it's okay to hurt people. Evan stepped forward. You better shut your mouth. Preston raised a hand, stopping him. His jaw clenched, veins bulging in his neck. You want to see a coward? I'll show you what a coward looks like. He swung. This time, I didn't let him land it. I stepped inside his punch, redirected his weight, and swept his legs. He hit the concrete floor hard, the air knocked out of him. Evan rushed me, but I caught his wrist, twisted, and put him face first into the wall. Not hard enough to break anything, just hard enough to make a point. Mason stood, eyes wide. Ryder pressed himself into the corner. The guard finally looked up from his phone, but didn't move. Just watched. Preston rolled onto his back, gasping. You just signed your death warrant. I crouched beside him, voice low. No, I just showed you what happens when you pick a fight with someone who actually knows how to finish one. I stood and walked back to my bunk, heart pounding but hands steady. Preston didn't get up for a long time. That night, Mason slid closer to my bunk after the lights went out. That was stupid, he whispered. Probably. He's gonna come after you. And when he does, the guards won't stop him. Victor won't either. I know. Then why'd you do it? I stared at the ceiling. Because men like Preston only respect one thing. And it's not patience. Mason was quiet for a moment. He's gonna tell Victor you started it. Let him. You really got a plan, or are you just winging this? I turned my head toward him. You still want out of this. More than anything. Then when the time comes, you tell the truth. Everything Victor told Preston to do. Everything you saw. You do that, and I'll make sure you walk out of here clean. How? Because I'm not here to fight Preston, I said quietly. I'm here to expose Victor. And Preston's going to help me do it, whether he knows it or not. 2 days later, Preston tried again. He waited until we were in the showers. No cameras, just 4 walls and a drain. Evan and another inmate cornered me while Preston stepped in close, shirtless, fists clenched. You embarrassed me, he said. Now I'm going to return the favor. Walk away, Preston. Too late for that. He came at me hard, throwing wild punches. I blocked, deflected, stayed defensive. Evan grabbed my arm from behind, holding me in place. Preston grinned. Not so tough now, are you? He swung for my ribs. I twisted, using Evan's grip as leverage, and drove my elbow into his gut. He let go, stumbling back. I ducked Preston's next punch and swept his legs again. This time he stayed down longer. Evan came at me from the side. I caught his wrist, hyperextended his elbow just enough to make him scream, then let go. He collapsed, clutching his arm. The third inmate backed away, hands up. I'm out. Preston struggled to his feet, breathing hard, blood dripping from his nose. You're dead. You hear me? Dead. I stepped closer, voice calm. No, I'm not. Because every time you come at me, you lose. And everyone in here is starting to see it. I walked out of the showers, water still dripping from my hair. Behind me, Preston's voice echoed, broken and furious. Victor's gonna kill you. Maybe. But not before I made sure Victor's entire system came down with me. That night, Ryder approached me in the day room. His voice was shaky but determined. I heard what you did. In the showers. Don't believe everything you hear. I believe it. He glanced around nervously. Preston's been running this place for months. Nobody stands up to him. But you did. Twice. Doesn't make me a hero. Maybe not. But it makes you different. He paused. I want to help. I studied him. Help how? I don't know yet. But if you're trying to take down Victor, I'm in. He's the reason I'm even in here. Planted evidence during a traffic stop because I didn't show him respect. Another victim. Another piece of the puzzle. I nodded slowly. Keep your ears open. Anything you hear about Victor, about how this place operates, you tell me. Got it. 3 days later, Mason pulled me aside during rec time. Preston's planning something, he whispered. I heard him talking to Quinn. They're setting you up. Staged fight. Supposed to look like you attacked Preston first. Then the guards come in and beat you down. Maybe worse. When? Tonight. After count. I nodded. Good. Mason blinked. Good? Did you hear what I just said? I heard. And it's exactly what I need. You've lost your mind. No, I said quietly. I've just been waiting for Victor to make his move. And now he has. Because once they came for me, once they crossed that line in a way that couldn't be hidden or explained away, I'd have everything I needed. And so would Amelia. After evening count, the lights dimmed but didn't go out completely. That was the first sign something was wrong. Usually by 9, the block went dark except for the emergency strips along the floor. Tonight, the overhead fluorescents stayed on, buzzing like angry hornets. I sat on my bunk, back against the wall, watching. Preston lay on his bunk across from me, eyes closed, but his breathing was too controlled. Awake, waiting. Evan sat at the table pretending to shuffle cards he wasn't actually playing with. Mason paced near the corner, nervous energy radiating off him. Ryder stayed in his bunk, covers pulled up to his chin, sensing the shift in atmosphere. At 9:47, the cell door buzzed and swung open. 2 guards stepped in, Quinn and another one I'd seen but didn't know by name. Both had their hands on their belts, not relaxed, not routine. Read, Quinn said flatly. Sheriff wants to see you. I didn't move. At 10 at night? Now. Preston sat up, grinning. Have fun, Navy boy. I stood slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. As I walked toward the door, I caught Mason's eye. He looked terrified. I gave him the smallest nod. Stay quiet. Watch everything. They cuffed me in the hallway, tighter than necessary, and led me down a corridor I hadn't been through before. Not toward the administrative offices. Deeper into the building, where the cameras had blind spots. My pulse stayed steady. I'd been in worse positions. They stopped at a steel door marked Storage B. Quinn unlocked it and shoved me inside. The room was small, concrete, empty except for a single folding chair in the center under a bare bulb. Victor stood in the corner, arms crossed, that same cold smile on his face. Sit, he said. I didn't. Quinn shoved me toward the chair. I sat, more to keep the situation from escalating too fast than out of obedience. Victor stepped forward, circling me slowly. You've been causing problems, Logan. I've been sitting in a cell. You've been turning my inmates against each other, asking questions, making people nervous. People with something to hide get nervous. He stopped in front of me. You think you're clever, coming in here, playing hero, but you don't understand how things work. Then explain it to me. Victor's smile widened. This county doesn't have funding like the cities do. Budget cuts every year. So I found other ways to keep things running. Private arrangements. Mutual benefits. You're selling inmates. He didn't deny it. I'm providing a service. Local businesses need problems solved quietly. I have people inside who can handle that. Everyone wins. Except the people you're using. They're criminals, he said, voice flat. Nobody cares what happens to them. Harper wasn't a criminal. Victor's expression darkened. Your wife was an example. She came into my county thinking she could mouth off to my deputy, question my authority. I don't tolerate that. So you had her beaten. I had her taught a lesson, he corrected. Preston was happy to help. He's good at delivering messages. My hands curled into fists behind my back, cuffs biting into my wrists. Victor leaned in close. And now you're here thinking you can expose me, bring me down. But here's the thing, Logan. Nobody's going to believe you. You're just another inmate with a grudge. And tomorrow morning, you're going to have an unfortunate accident. Slipped in the shower. Hit your head. These things happen. He straightened, nodding to Quinn. Take him back. Make sure he understands. Quinn grabbed my arm, yanking me to my feet. But as we reached the door, Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then answered. What? His voice sharpened. When? No. Shut it down. Now. He hung up, his face tight with barely controlled rage. Problem? I asked. Victor's eyes snapped to me. Get him out of here. They dragged me back to the cell and threw me inside. Preston was already standing, confused. What happened? Shut up. Quinn snapped, slamming the door. I sat on my bunk, breathing steady, watching the walls. Mason moved closer. What did he say? Everything, I whispered. He admitted all of it. The deals. The setup. Harper. Did you record it? No. But he's rattled. Something just went wrong for him. Something big. Ryder sat up. What do? We wait. The next morning, the entire jail was on lockdown. No day room. No showers. Guards moving fast, whispering into radios. Preston banged on the door. What's going on out there? No answer. By noon, we heard it. Federal agents had arrived. Someone had leaked documents to the state attorney general's office. Transfer logs, financial records, communications between Victor and local gang leaders. Everything. Mason's eyes went wide. How? I didn't answer. But I knew. Amelia had been working her angle on the outside. She'd found someone willing to listen. And now the walls were closing in. At 3 p.m., the door opened. But it wasn't Quinn. It was a man in a dark suit, badge clipped to his belt. Behind him, 2 more agents. Preston Cole, Evan Briggs, you're being transferred into federal custody, pending investigation into organized criminal activity. Preston's face went pale. What? No. Victor said, Sheriff Hale is currently being detained, the agent said coldly. Whatever he promised you doesn't matter anymore. They cuffed Preston and Evan and led them out. The agent turned to me. Logan Reed. Yeah. Agent Nathaniel Cross, FBI. I'm going to need you to come with me. We have questions. I stood. Am I under arrest? No. You're a witness. As they led me out, I passed Mason. He stared at me, stunned. Tell the truth, I said quietly. You'll be okay. He nodded, tears in his eyes. Outside the cell, the hallway was chaos. Victor was being led past in cuffs, flanked by agents. His eyes locked on mine. No smile now. Just rage. I said nothing. Just watched him disappear around the corner. Agent Cross led me to an interview room I'd never seen before. Clean, fluorescent lit, with a table, 2 chairs, and a recording device already set up. He gestured for me to sit. You're not in trouble, he said, settling across from me. But I need to understand what you were doing in that cell. Serving time for assaulting an officer. Right. He opened a folder, scanning pages. Accept witnesses, say Sheriff Hale, through the first punch. You were deliberately arrested. I didn't respond. Cross leaned forward. Logan, we've been investigating Hale for 8 months. Complaints, missing evidence, unexplained injuries. But every time we got close, witnesses disappeared or recanted. Then 3 days ago, an attorney named Amelia Garrison delivered a package to our office. Financial records, inmate transfer logs, text messages between Hale and known criminals. She said you were gathering intel from the inside. She said that. She did. And she was right, wasn't she? I met his eyes. Victor Hale used that jail like a weapon. He traded inmates for favors, let them brutalize people, and buried anyone who spoke up. My wife was one of his victims. I wanted proof. And did you get it? He confessed. Last night. Told me everything. Cross's expression sharpened. We didn't record that conversation. I know. But Mason Tate heard parts of it. Ryder Finch can testify to the culture inside that block. And Preston Cole will break under pressure. He's a coward who only acted because Victor protected him. Cross studied me for a long moment. You took a hell of a risk. It was the only way. He nodded slowly. We're moving forward with federal charges. Racketeering, civil rights violations, obstruction of justice. Hale's done. So are the people who helped him. What about Harper? Does she get justice? She does. And so do the others. Cross closed the folder. You're free to go, Mr. Reed. But we'll need you to testify. I will. They released me 2 hours later. No charges. No record. Just a handshake from Cross and a warning to stay available. I walked out into the parking lot where Amelia was waiting, arms crossed, leaning against her car. You're insane, she said when she saw me. You've mentioned that. I spent 3 days thinking you were going to get yourself killed. But I didn't. She shook her head, almost smiling. No, you didn't. And because of what you did, we have enough to bury Hale and everyone connected to him. How'd you get the records? A deputy named Kendra. She's been documenting everything for years, waiting for someone who'd actually do something with it. When I told her you were inside gathering evidence, she finally handed it over. I looked back at the jail, its ugly brick walls and razor wire glinting in the afternoon sun. What happens to the inmates? Preston and Evan are facing federal charges. Mason and Ryder are being offered immunity in exchange for testimony. The others are being reviewed case by case. And Harper? Amelia's expression softened. She's waiting for you at home. I drove back in silence, hands gripping the wheel, mind racing through everything that had happened. Weeks of planning, days inside that cell, every calculated move, all of it leading to this. Victor was done. His network dismantled. But the cost lingered. When I pulled into the driveway, Harper was standing on the porch. She looked thinner, more fragile than I remembered, but her eyes lit up when she saw me. I got out of the truck and walked toward her. She met me halfway, collapsing into my arms, her body shaking with sobs. I thought I lost you, she whispered. You didn't. I'm here. She pulled back, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Amelia told me what you did. Logan, you could have died. I wasn't going to let him win. But you went to jail. You let them arrest you. Because it was the only way to get the truth. I cupped her face gently. He hurt you, Harp. And he was going to keep hurting people. I couldn't let that happen. Her tears flowed harder. I was so scared. I know. But it's over now. He's never going to hurt anyone again. She buried her face in my chest, and I held her, feeling the weight of everything we'd been through settle between us. 3 weeks later, I sat in a federal courtroom watching Victor Hale stand before a judge. His uniform was gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit. His smug smile had vanished, replaced by hollow eyes and a clenched jaw. The prosecutor read the charges. Racketeering, conspiracy, civil rights violations, assault, obstruction of justice. Mason testified first. His voice shook, but he told the truth. How Victor orchestrated beatings, how he controlled the jail like a criminal empire, how he'd unlocked Harper's cell and given the order. Ryder testified next, detailing the corruption, the planted evidence, the fear that kept everyone silent. Kendra, the deputy, brought documents, recordings, years of evidence she'd hidden away. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor asked me to describe what happened the night Harper was arrested. I did. Every detail, every word Victor had said, every bruise on Harper's face. Then I described what I'd seen inside that jail. The fear, The control. The system Victor had built to protect himself while destroying others. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. Victor stared at me from across the room, his face twisted with rage. I stared back, calm and steady. The judge spoke. Mr. Hale, you have used your position of authority to brutalize, manipulate, and terrorize the people you were sworn to protect. This court finds you guilty on all counts. Victor's head dropped. You are hereby sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 15. The gavel struck. Harper grabbed my hand, squeezing tight. It was over. The weeks following Victor's sentencing felt like the world was slowly exhaling. The town of Ridgeway buzzed with shock, anger, and for some, relief. Local news vans lined the courthouse steps. Headlines screamed about corruption, abuse of power, and the Navy SEAL who'd gone undercover in his own county jail to expose it all. I didn't talk to reporters. Neither did Harper. We stayed home, letting the system finish what we'd started. But the investigation was far from over. Agent Cross called me on a Tuesday morning. We need you to come in. There's been a development. What kind of development? Judge Colin Morris and Prosecutor Brooke Callahan are being brought in for questioning. Their involvement with Hale runs deeper than we thought. I wasn't surprised. I'd seen the way they operated in that courtroom, dismissing Harper's case without a second glance. They hadn't just looked the other way. They'd actively helped bury the truth. When do you need me? This afternoon. 2 o'clock. The federal building was a stark contrast to Ridgeway's crumbling county courthouse. Everything here was clean, official, and carried the weight of authority that actually meant something. Cross met me in the lobby and led me upstairs to a conference room where 2 other agents waited. On the table sat stacks of documents, photographs, and what looked like years' worth of case files. Sit, Cross said, gesturing to a chair. We've been digging into Morris and Callahan's records. What we found is damning. He slid a folder toward me. Inside were email exchanges between Victor, Judge Morris, and Brooke Callahan. They weren't even trying to hide it. Dismissing cases, reducing charges, sealing records, all in exchange for campaign donations, favors, and in Morris's case, a lakeside cabin Victor helped finance under the table. They were all in it together, I said, flipping through the pages. For at least 6 years, Cross confirmed. Every complaint filed against Hale went through Morris or Callahan. They buried them, threatened witnesses, sealed evidence. They weren't just complicit, they were active participants. What happens now? We're arresting them both today, but we need your testimony again, specifically about the hearing where your wife's case was dismissed. I'll testify. Cross nodded. Good, because this doesn't end with Hale. We're dismantling the entire network. Judge Colin Morris was arrested at his home that evening. Cameras caught him being let out in handcuffs, his face pale and sweating, his attorney already shouting about wrongful arrest. Brooke Callahan was picked up at her office. She didn't say a word, just stared straight ahead as agents escorted her to a waiting car. The town erupted. Some people were furious, claiming it was a federal overreach. Others celebrated, finally feeling like justice was possible. Harper watched the news coverage with me that night, her hand wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone cold an hour ago. Do you think they'll actually go to prison? She asked quietly. Yes. How do you know? Because they left a paper trail a mile long. They got arrogant, thought they were untouchable. I looked at her. They weren't. She set the cup down, staring at the screen where Morris's face flashed in a mugshot. I was so scared that day in court. When he dismissed everything, when Callahan acted like I was lying. I felt like I was drowning and nobody cared. I cared. I know. She turned to me, eyes glistening. But I didn't think it would matter. I thought Victor had won. He didn't win. He just made us fight harder. 2 weeks later, I sat in another courtroom, this one packed with reporters, victims, and people who'd suffered under Ridgeway's corrupt system for years. Morris and Callahan sat at separate tables, both flanked by high-priced lawyers who looked less confident than they probably wanted to appear. The prosecution laid out the case methodically. Financial records showing illegal payments. Emails coordinating case dismissals. Testimony from deputies, inmates, and victims who'd been silenced for years. Then they called Harper to the stand. I watched her walk up, shoulders back, hands steady. She'd been terrified of this moment, but she didn't show it. The prosecutor asked her to describe what happened the night she was arrested. Harper's voice was clear, calm. She described the traffic stop, Victor's hostility, the way he'd twisted her questions into resisting arrest. Then she described the cell, the inmates, the fear. And when you went to court to file a complaint, the prosecutor asked, "What happened?" Harper looked directly at Judge Morris. He dismissed it without even listening. He said there was no evidence, that it was my word against the sheriff's, and that I should be grateful I wasn't being charged with assaulting an officer. Morris shifted uncomfortably. And Prosecutor Callahan? The prosecutor pressed. She told me I was wasting everyone's time, that if I kept pushing, they'd file charges against me for filing a false report. The courtroom murmured. When Harper stepped down, she looked at me. I nodded. You did it. Then they called me. I walked to the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore the same oath I'd sworn weeks before. The prosecutor asked me to describe the hearing. Judge Morris didn't look at the evidence, I said. He barely looked at my wife. He made up his mind before we even walked in. And when we left, Sheriff Hale was waiting in the parking lot. He tipped his hat at me, like it was a joke. What did that tell you? That the system wasn't broken. It was designed this way. Victor, Morris, Callahan, they weren't just protecting each other. They were running Ridgeway like their own private kingdom. Morris's lawyer objected, calling it speculation. The judge overruled. It's not speculation when you have emails proving coordination, the prosecutor said, holding up documents. It's conspiracy. The trial lasted 3 days. On the 4th day, the jury returned. Judge Colin Morris, guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 12 years. Prosecutor Brooke Callahan, guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 10 years. When the gavel struck, Harper exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for months. Outside the courthouse, Agent Cross found me on the steps. You did it, he said. You brought down an entire corrupt system. I didn't do it alone. No, but you started it. He extended his hand. Thank you. I shook it. Just make sure it doesn't happen again. We will. That night, Harper and I sat on the back porch, the sky fading from orange to deep blue. For the first time in months, the air felt lighter. What now? She asked. Now we heal. You think we can? I looked at her, at the woman who'd survived hell and still found the strength to stand in a courtroom and tell her story. Yeah, I said. I do. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you too. We sat in silence, watching the stars appear one by one. Victor Hale was in prison. Morris and Callahan were behind bars. The system that protected them was dismantled. And for the first time since that phone call at 2:13 a.m., I felt like we could finally breathe. Justice hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. 6 months later, the world looked different. Ridgeway County had a new sheriff, a woman named Captain Fiona Blake, brought in from the state police with a mandate to rebuild trust and transparency. The jail was under federal oversight. Every camera worked. Every complaint was logged and investigated. The town was healing, slowly, but healing nonetheless. Harper and I sat in the back row of a small community center where victims of Victor's system had gathered for a restorative justice hearing. It wasn't a trial. Those were over. This was something else. A chance for people to speak, to be heard, to reclaim what had been taken from them. Mason Tate spoke first. He'd been released weeks ago, charges dropped in exchange for his testimony. He stood at the podium, hands gripping the edges, voice shaking but determined. I was scared every single day in that jail, he said. Not because of the other inmates. Because of the man who was supposed to protect us. Sheriff Hale made me watch him hurt people. He told me if I said anything, I'd be next. I believed him. until Logan showed me that silence doesn't keep you safe. It just keeps evil alive. He looked back at me, nodding once before sitting down. Ryder went next. His voice was stronger now, no longer the terrified kid I'd met in that cell. Victor Hale planted drugs in my car because I refused to lie for him in another case. He destroyed my life for saying no. But because people like Logan refused to give up, I got my life back. I'm in college now. I'm studying law because I want to make sure this never happens to anyone else. One by one, others stood. A woman whose son had died under suspicious circumstances in custody. A man who'd been beaten for refusing to deliver a message for Victor. A teenager who'd been threatened into silence. Each story was a wound exposed, and each telling was part of the healing. When the last person finished, the mediator asked if anyone else wanted to speak. Harper squeezed my hand. Go. I hesitated. I'd already testified twice. Said everything that needed to be said in court. But this wasn't court. This was different. I stood and walked to the front. Every eye in the room followed me. I'm Logan Reed, I said. Most of you know my story. My wife was brutalized in Victor Hale's jail. And when I tried to get justice through the system, I was told to go home and forget about it. I paused, looking at the faces staring back. People who'd lived with fear for years, who'd been told they didn't matter. I spent 20 years as a Navy SEAL. I fought in wars overseas, protected people I'd never meet, followed orders even when they didn't make sense. But the hardest fight I ever fought was right here, in my own country, against a man wearing a badge. My voice steadied. Victor Hale thought power meant he could hurt people without consequences. Judge Morris and Prosecutor Callahan thought loyalty to each other was more important than justice. They were wrong. And the reason they're in prison now isn't because I'm special or because I'm a SEAL. It's because we refused to accept that this was just how things were. I looked at Harper. She was crying, but smiling. My wife could have stayed quiet, could have moved on, buried the pain, pretended it didn't happen. But she didn't. She stood up. She testified. She fought even when the system told her she'd already lost. I turned back to the crowd. Every person in this room did the same. Mason, Ryder, Kendra, Amelia, you all risked something to tell the truth. And because of that, Ridgeway is different now. Not perfect, not healed, but different. I stepped back from the podium. Victor Hale didn't just lose his freedom. He lost his power. And that's the revenge that matters most. The room was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then the whole room erupted in applause. I walked back to Harper, and she pulled me into a tight hug, whispering, "Thank you." 3 months later, Harper and I drove to a quiet beach 2 states away. No news vans, no courtrooms, no questions, just sand, waves, and the kind of silence that felt like peace instead of dread. We walked along the shoreline, shoes in hand, the ocean cold against our feet. "Do you ever regret it?" Harper asked. "Going into that jail? Risking everything?" I thought about it. The fear, the fights. The moment Victor smiled at me thinking he'd won. "No," I said, "because if I hadn't, he'd still be out there. And so would Morris and Callahan. And more people would have suffered. But you could have died." I could have, but I didn't. I stopped, turning to face her. "And because I didn't, you're safe. Mason's free. Ryder's in school. Victor's in a cell where he belongs." Her eyes filled with tears again. "You broke them." "We broke them," I corrected. "You, me, Amelia, everyone who refused to stay silent." That's how systems fall, not because one person fights, but because enough people decide they've had enough. She smiled, wiping her eyes. "So what now? Now we live. We heal. We remember that justice isn't always fast, but it's worth fighting for." We stood there for a long time, watching the waves roll in, the sun sinking low on the horizon. I'd spent 20 years breaking enemy strongholds overseas. But the most important mission I'd ever completed was right here, standing beside the woman I loved, knowing that the men who hurt her would never hurt anyone again. Not because I killed them, not because I destroyed them with violence, but because I dismantled the system that protected them, exposed the truth, and let justice do what it was always supposed to do. Victor Hale thought a dirty sheriff could break a Navy SEAL. He was wrong. I didn't just survive that cell. I broke every man in it. Not with my fists, but with the one thing they never saw coming, the truth.